professional, probably, you know, also personal life. I can start, so Brian, I can, you know, I'm 100% Italian, not just half or a quarter. And I moved from Naples, 6.5 years ago, for, of course, personal reasons, for love. Oh, I know. And amore. And so after 6 months, I found out there is a San Diego Italian Film Festival here, and I was so shocked. I thought, how that is possible, you know, that we have an Italian film festival in town. So I started, you know, collaborating with them, and after one or 2 years now, I don't remember, they offered me the position as artistic director, and here I am. Maybe, I don't know if everybody knows that there is an Italian film festival in town. We have, no, there you go. So we have the festival with 12, 13 movies in October, and then we have a movie per month all year round. So we are, this is the 12, 13 years in town, and it's a small miracle that we have. And this is something that really inspired me, working for this organization, trying to build a bridge between my country and my new country that is here. And that's also the reason why we have so many Q&A and conversations after our movies, because we really believe that the issues that are important in contemporary Italian film is something that is also important here in San Diego, in California, in the United States. So that's for me, for beginning. And I would say, you know, let's start with Brian, was brave enough to sit next to me. And so, you know, let's give everybody the opportunity to start sharing some stories. And of course, you know, we're not Italians, so we're not going to interrupt each other a lot. I know, so, you know, let's try. There you go. Brian.
I wish I had a really romantic origin story.
Well, it didn't go well. Eh?
Oh, but we all benefited.
Supposed to interrupt.
I feel like I have like a lot of inspirational moments that have led me here. But I think inspired by your story, I could talk about a bad date. Where it was a great date, it changed my life. But it was one of those like, I'll just say what happened. I was in college. I went to see, it was a 3-hour movie from Taiwan. My family's from Taiwan. I'd never seen a movie from Taiwan before. I didn't care about movies from Taiwan. All I knew was this movie won an award at the Cannes Film Festival. It must be important. I saw myself as a cinephile of like international cinema. So I go to see this movie, and when the lights come up at the end, 3 hours later, my shirt is entirely drenched with tears. And I'd never seen a movie that, I'd never had that kind of profound experience before, and I looked over at my date, who was like, "What? You cried during that movie?" So if that was clearly this isn't gonna work. But also it started getting me thinking about, why do some people cry at movies and some people don't? Are there certain things that are personal and meaningful to one person and not to another person? And through investigating it further, I realized it has something to do with my family. The fact that I saw characters in this movie that were like my family members. I've never seen them on the screen before. I never had a chance to hear the language like pumped out into the auditorium the way like the Julia Roberts movie would be. I'd never seen like just mundane things that my family does that should not be a movie, but like presented on a big screen that suddenly becomes cinematic. That was moving to me. And my date, who was not from Taiwan, didn't have that experience. So at that moment, should we just kind of watch our own movies? Should that be the goal then? To be like, to have the most efficient kind of like, we should all be moved to the maximum every single time. We should just watch the movies that are made for us. So that was one path I could have taken. But then I was also becoming a film critic at this time and realizing that as a film critic, I'm not just writing to people who look like me or who are from my family. I'm writing to all kinds of people. So I realized that my job is as some kind of translator, not just of my culture to a different culture, but also when I encounter difference, what can I do with that as a way to, how do we model for each other ways to understand across different cultures? And I realized that was perhaps the inspiration. Not necessarily that I want to see this person ever again, but like, what are the conversations we can have now that I've had an experience and you didn't? Maybe you had a different kind of experience that's just as meaningful as mine. And what is the conversation we can have around that? And for me, that led to my film criticism, and later my work with the Asian Film Festival, and then also my work as a professor, teaching international cinema to audiences that grew up in Hollywood. So I'll go with that story today.
Thank you very much. Pete, what is your story that you want to share?
Well, my story, I was born and raised in Cuba, and my best two friends since elementary school are both filmmakers, pretty substantial filmmakers. So the three of us really grew up wanting to be writers. They ended up being filmmakers. I was a novelist, and I was also a designer. And my friends told me that writing a novel was boring, but what they really wanted to do, because I had made some money, they wanted me to invest in their movies. You got to be careful of filmmakers. You've always got a great script that's going to bring a lot of money. So I did get involved writing. I've written several screenplays. I talked to a lot of screenplays. I produced 2 major films. And what you realize is that life is a narrative. Life is about storytelling. No matter what you do, no matter what career you have, it's about telling a story. Because we humans really don't think in words, we think in stories. It's just that we've gotten advanced and we think in words. So it's been a great experience. It's probably one of the hardest things you'll ever do, making a film, but it's probably one of the most rewarding things you'll ever do, is making a film.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Okay, Xavier, I know that you don't like to talk in public, but let's do it.
Well, it's kind of hard to, top those 2 stories. For me, film was like the last thing I really thought of. I was really into jazz, tap, and ballet through high school, and it wasn't until a senior year in high school my professor gave me a book and was like, you should really pursue film because you look at things more from a different perspective than your traditional filmmakers do. And I looked at it from a way of saying, how can I bring light to a specific area that's being cast away in the dark and showing those stories that can connect to more of a relatable person that's not a film critic, but just someone that's living where I was living growing up in like Paradise Hills, and just being surrounded by a whole bunch of gangs and violence and the outlet of sports. So when he gave me that book, I was a horrible reader. Didn't like to read. And that even translated into college, which I breezed past breezily because, I just didn't really want to do the work. I got into the film at Grossmont and then into State and really kind of dove into lighting. And from that, I was more so focused on lighting more than story, because you can tell a story through lighting. And the way how you light something can ultimately draw the person in. And though I haven't made a feature film yet, I am working on one, but I took the route of doing a lot of music videos and telling stories through lighting through music videos instead of the traditional way of running gun type of music videos. And then from there, I kind of just dove into producing a lot of my friends' off-the-wall projects. We did comedies and dark comedies, and from there, I just, knew I wanted to do something a little bit more in-depth and a little bit more deeper, so I started to dive more into drama, because that's where I connected more with, because of the relatability of just growing up in poverty and telling these stories of just people who had stories to tell. And from there, just kind of to me here where I'm at today. I don't know, I'm so nervous. Oh man. Good. But let's pass it on.
Can you see what book that was? What was the book?
Honestly,
I didn't read it.
I didn't read it. But I am reading a lot more books now when it comes to filmmaking at the age of 32, which is weird because when you're young, you hate reading. And my brother's the complete opposite. He loves reading at a very young age, and he hates it now. I love it now, and I hate it then.
Thank you.
Well, I've been in love with movies for as long as I can remember because of my father, who introduced me to film from when I was really little. And I remember him taking me to King Kong and Creature from the Black Lagoon and The Marx Brothers, Adventures of Robin Hood. And I remember when I was in school, back in the old days before VHS, before streaming movies, my dad saw that On the Waterfront was playing at like midnight on television. And he said, you should stay home from school tomorrow so that you can watch that movie because it's important. And so, for some reason, that made me feel that, well, you know what, if movies are important enough to ditch school for, then maybe there's something to them. And as I got older, I fell in love with film as a means of communicating, as a way of opening doors to all sorts of things. And my dad and my mom were both teachers. So every time I went to a film, if there were things I didn't understand, they didn't just tell me the answer. They would go, well, what do you think that means? Or, well, maybe you could go look it up somewhere back before the internet. You could, you know, research it and find out what. I remember coming out of 2001 when I was about 8 years old, and I said, like, I didn't understand it. And he goes, well, what didn't you understand? Well, what's that big black thing? Well, what do you think it is? Well, I don't know. Can't you tell me? No, you need to think about it. And so from an early age, I was kind of invested with the sense of looking at these things critically and talking about them. So that's what I've kind of taken with me. I love, I mean, film criticism is fun, but the bad part about it is it's not very two-way, especially not now. But I program a lot of films at Ethan's venue of Digital Gym Cinema, and we run these year-long film programs, and part of what we want to do is we want to kind of elevate the level of conversation about film. So we want to show films in a context, we want to give people a sense of when they were made, why they were made, what they mean in a bigger picture of cinematic history, how these things evolve. We just finished a year-long film noir series that we showed in chronological order. So you get to see the films develop across time, and it's really fun to be able to watch a film and then sit down with people and talk about it. And you know, some people stay for, you know, a half hour or an hour afterwards talking about movies. And we've developed a nice community of people who really want to talk about film. And so that's what I love about movies. And I work at KPBS, and as the only arts reporter in a newsroom, I'm frequently at the bottom of the totem pole all the time. But the point I always try to make to them is that any topic you want to deal with, you can access through film or art. And sometimes you can access it in a much more relatable and compelling way than by just reporting a news story. So anything that's going on, I can find a film that deals with it directly or indirectly, and sometimes it's a way to get to people in a much more effective way. And I love the way that pop culture, I think, reveals more about us than a lot of maybe more serious things do. I think watching films from a foreign country or reading books, or, you know, I used to run an anime and manga club in my son's middle school, and I've run all sorts of other film programs, and it's just like I feel you get to know people and cultures much better through pop culture. And so I've just passionately followed that and continue to do film criticism and program film, which is something I really love to do. And we don't have like enough time or money or venues to do all the programming we want to do.
Yeah, that's great. You know, I'm very jealous because I grew up in a town in Italy where we didn't have, and still we don't have, a theater. And so I'm a VHS product. And I loved also reading when I was young, but my mother didn't like it at all. And still, so now what I'm saying is that I wasn't, encouraged that much. But my father, thank God, loved Martin Scorsese and Sergio Leone. And so, I grew up with, I still remember, playing on and on this VHS. And, the other one was Orson Welles. But also imagine that I watch all these classics, if you want, dubbed in Italian. So since I'm here, I'm rewatching everything, finally, in English, but also since, I've been in love with movies from all around the world, finally in the original language, So I loved, DVDs and Blu-rays and streaming services with all the options to access to the real language that is, the main door to the culture of your country. So, Jodi, what is your experience, story, and inspiration?
Well, since we're talking about how we grew up, I grew up in a very small town in Vermont with very protective parents who didn't really let me do anything, and we watched a lot of action movies. I've seen every Sylvester Stallone, Clint Eastwood movie at least 3 times. So what drew me to film was really the ability to experience other people's lifestyles and other people's world. That's something I, being in this tiny world, didn't really even understand until I left when I was 18 to go to college. And that's what really attracted me. I had a lot of great college friends who'd be like, watch this movie, watch this movie. They were all film majors. And I was the Spanish sociology major. And they'd bring these incredible movies, independent movies home and make me watch them in our little tiny living room. And that is what I really love, is being able to sort of experience these things that I had no access to and didn't even understand growing up. But what attracted me to making film was sort of the community around it, the people, the relationships. Like, film is hard. Film is hard to make. So it forges and or destroys relationships with people very quickly. You see what someone is made of after 16 hours and not enough food and everyone's tired and people are getting grumpy. Like, you start realizing, you really learn the people that are around you and what they're about, and it really sort of solidifies, sometimes not always, but solidifies your understanding of each other and your relationships. What keeps me passionate, because it is hard to do, what keeps me passionate is sort of watching progress and growth in the people around me. I'm a teacher at City College. I've taught all over San Diego. I run the Film Consortium, which brings together all the filmmakers that we can from across the city and gets them working together. What inspires me is to sort of watch the growth. Like 6 years ago, I knew 2 actors who acted in a film once. And now I can't even tell you how many people I know in this town who are actors. To go from making these small short films to making, like, now a feature film, and financing and producing a feature film here in San Diego with local talent is like, it kind of blows my mind to get from that place to where we are and to imagine kind of where it's going to go from there. That's what keeps me going. It's every day we'll waking up and being like, this is really hard, but like, we got somewhere yesterday. We're a little further along. It's like, there's 1,000 more steps between now and we're, the next plateau, I'd say, but that inspiration of the people and the culture and the community around it really keeps me happy and inspired and going forward.
Great.
Yes.
And this guy was my first film job right here. He hired me.
Yes, we're always looking for good. just a plug. I guess my passion really connects to working towards social justice and working towards providing, combating the negative stereotypes that we're seeing in mainstream cinema. Growing up in Southern California, I was experiencing different realities. My friends in the community, what I was seeing with friends was very different from what I was seeing on mainstream cinema and mainstream news. And so early on, I knew whatever I was going to do, I was going to try to combat those negative stereotypes and create programs or education programs that would fight that and show something different that we're seeing. So about 28, 29 years ago, I started the Chicano Film Festival at the UC Santa Cruz. I had a great professor, which is a common theme here in terms of mentorships, whether it's family members or professors. Definitely encourage everyone to seek a mentor. Like Jodi said, you can't do this alone. It's a team effort.
So I had a wonderful mentor that helped me with this Chicano Film Festival at UC Santa Cruz, and thus was the beginning of kind of my career in Latino cinema. So when I came down here, I saw that there wasn't a Latino festival with such a huge population, obviously on both sides of the border. And again, when you look at the current political climate that we're living in the federal government that's so anti-immigrant, it's really important for us. Yes, there's progress. There's Alfonso Cuarón winning Oscars and Del Toro and stuff like that. But we really need, as filmmakers, to tell a different narrative. And we need to show films that tell a different narrative. Our realities of living on the border and working with immigrants and the diversity of our cultures and our communities. Because Hollywood's not going to do it for us. Our federal government's not going to do it for us. Mainstream news media is not going to do it for us. So we as artists and filmmakers need to constantly push that. So that's why I started the San Diego Latino Film Festival 25 years ago, why I started the Teen Producers Project to give underserved kids the chance to tell their own stories, why we have the Digital Gym Cinema to present different independent foreign voices that otherwise that wouldn't be seen here in San Diego. So we continue to kind of keep on fighting at that. Lots of progress have been made, but clearly as we're looking at what's happening just a few miles south, a lot of work needs to be done, and through film and video and through artists, I think we can help, change that narrative and hopefully, get a better world.
Yeah, so what I hear here is, a focus on stories, but I would like to pick on team effort, because yes, what also Vanguard, is doing here is to put people together, is to expand the networking, is to create real possibilities for people to get to know each other and hopefully also create something out of it. So, mentorship is important, being inspired by what we love and what we didn't love and then we ended up, loving after is great. But what about, the challenges that you guys encountered, in your professional life? What was a challenge that you had to face and hopefully, overcome in order to keep going and to be successful in what you do in your professional life? Can we share some of those?
So we're going back this way?
No, I don't know.
Just work something out and then start the topic.
Whoever wants to start is fine with me.
I think the biggest challenge for me personally is financing. Financing because I am a father and I'm 32. So right off the gate, my girlfriend, who's been very, very supportive of me pursuing film, still has this mentality of, well, you need a job. A real job. You can't be doing these pro bono projects. This money should be going to pay rent, stop producing other people's stuff. But as time has progressed, I've always been trying to instill to her that there's a bigger picture into what I'm doing. It may hurt me in the short term, but I'm not looking at the short term. I'm looking at the long-term effects of what I'm doing in this industry. And these are all calculated risks because when it comes to self-producing music videos for up-and-coming artists in San Diego or in Los Angeles, and they don't have the budget, and I try to make them think of the potential of us spending this money, how we can allocate and market everything, that they need to be looking at the bigger picture and not looking at the short-term effect of you losing that money now, but look how much work, effort, and thought process that we put into this. This is where it can take you if you are patient. So for me, the financing has been one of the troubling things because I have a 10-year-old now who's into travel basketball and doing curricular activities and making sure that he's covered as well as me pursuing the filming that I want to do and not being constrained by overheads of just well, you have to do it this way. Well, what if I don't want to do it that way and I want to put a different take on educating other people on this exact process that I'm doing and trial and error. So for me, the financing is one of the troubling things that I've face, but I've learned now to, balance it out where I do, I've made this amount of money, I'll put some away for a potential project in the future, but then the remainder goes toward other expenses. And it really came down to just constantly networking with this person saying, hey, you have this project, I don't mind spending a couple of hours to, let me light it for you. Just to show interest that I really want to do this. And if they don't have the money to pay me, but what we call it is called Wookiee debts. If you guys are familiar with Star Wars. Where we do these things in exchange for favors. And what I mean by favors is that I will work on a project, gap fit, and then if they have a project coming up, whether it's paid or non-paid, they think of me and says, well, he helped me on this project, it's only right that I return that favor to him.
Great.
Let me connect a few dots, because we talked about filmmaking and reading and writing. It's about storytelling. And the key to storytelling is literature and is writing. If you want to be a filmmaker, become a great writer. If you have a great script, the doors are wide open. You go to Hollywood and become a big director if you have a great script. So the great filmmakers are great writers and they're great readers because they understand about character development, they understand about rhythm, they understand about the basic dramatic components of the story. So people who say, I'm a filmmaker, but I don't like to read and I don't like to write, I don't believe it. You're not going to be a great filmmaker. I mean, you may make films, but why do you love a story? Because it's well written, it's got rich characters, and that's all based on something that you've read before. So if I encourage you, if you're really interested in film, is to read a lot. Watch films. But you learn so much by reading scripts. You actually, I believe, you learn more about reading scripts than about watching films. Because you read the script, and then when you watch the film, you understand the brilliance of the filmmaker and actually being able to transform the story from the written word to the actual visual. And that's the key of it. So I really encourage you to read a lot and read literature, read good stuff, not just a lot of. I agree with you that pop art and all that is good, but if you read the basics, the classics, if the Fellinis of the world, the great directors of the world are great readers and great writers. So I encourage you to learn the basics and then experiment. The people who experiment in any art form.
Yeah, in any art form.
In any art form, whether it's painting or sculpture or literature, if you don't learn the basics, if you don't master the basics, then when you experiment, it's crap.
I would also suggest watching bad movies.
Yes.
The reason for this
Well, you learn
is
you learn
if you
from
watch
that.
Fellini and you watch Kurosawa, you will be dazzled and amazed, and your mouth will drop open in awe. But it's hard to figure out how they achieve it. But if you watch a bad movie, you notice things that are being done wrong. You notice I'm not engaged in this, or that shot doesn't hold my interest, or that character doesn't make any sense, or it's complicated but not complex, and it leaves me why do I come out of this film frustrated because I don't understand what happened, but I'll come out of maybe a Coen Brothers film not knowing what happened, but being absolutely engaged by it and going it makes me want to talk about it. But I really do, on a certain level, watching films that are not good teaches you a lot as well. And the other thing I wanted to mention, just because of the people who are here, you guys are talking about making films, but then once you've made them, you need a place to show them. And venues is something that I really struggle to find good venues for people, because I was here the first year of the Asian Film Festival programming. I was here the first year of the Italian Film Festival. I was splicing film for the Jewish Film Festival the first year you guys had it. I was with Ethan when he started you were just a student film festival back. So I've seen all these festivals from their origins, begin, and thinking, and you started in a house. Didn't you start showing some films?
Well, we used to have our filmmaker night once a month in
Yeah,
the
so
living room on
I mean,
Golden Hill.
so tiny spaces, for the Asian Film Festival, they were at the University of San Diego, where when Leanne had picked the spot, she found out that there's no projection booth. I mean, we were like, she's like, what do you mean there's no projection booth? They go, well, Leanne, there's just a balcony. Like, there's no. So, I mean, finding a place to show films and then to find the audience to come and see them is so vital, because you guys can make films all you want, but if there's not an audience to show them to, then, it feels like all that effort and work is wasted. So, for San Diego, I really would like to see more festival-friendly venues, and, not just screens that are good, but locations where, you enjoy being in the theater. There's a nice, interaction between, if you have people on stage that you want to do Q&As with after, that you have a nice reception space where you can stay and talk about the films, because, that's one of the nicest things about festivals, is that there's, a means to talk about film. I mean, the Jewish Film Festival does that incredibly well, having post-film discussions, and I mean, all the festivals here really make an effort to do that, and that is such a great aspect of it. And there are films that you come out of. I mean, I just recently saw The Favorite, and I love the Greek director Yorgos Lanthimos, and his earlier films like Killing of a Sacred Deer and Lobster. I love films where you come out and all you want to do is talk to somebody about what you saw, because there's some ambiguity or complexity or things that you're trying to piece together, and film festivals provide the best venue for that. And I mean, one of the challenges is finding good venues, finding venues that don't charge you guys, atrociously high amounts of money, and, where they're able to have festivals that last for, 10 or 12 days and use multiple screens, and be able to present the works that people like you do. So I think venues here, and then trying to find an audience. I mean, it's hard to motivate people to get off their ass and come out to a theater. People want to just sit home and stream a movie, or they don't want to be worried about sitting next to somebody who's going to talk during the film or something. But honestly, watching a film and that communal experience. I mean, like I said, I work with Digital Gym, which is only 46 seats. So we have a very intimate screening venue. Half the audience there are regulars, and we know them all by their first name. And so watching these films all together is so much fun. And I work with a horror film festival, and watching horror with a group is the only way to watch it. Like, if you sit at home by yourself, it's not the same experience. And people have to remember that that's part of what the film experience is like. Sitting next to a jumper is the best thing in the world.
Because it makes you jump, because you didn't know that they were going to jump.
Because this isn't specifically a horror film, but there was a documentary about cinematographers, and the cinematographer for Rosemary's Baby, I forgot, I think it's Film Sticky, but he was talking to Roman Polanski about setting up the shot of Ruth Gordon answering the phone in the bedroom. And he says, don't you want me to center this shot so we can see her on the bed? And he said, no. He says, trust me. So what you're doing is you're looking through a doorway, and you see Ruth Gordon's knee, and she's leaning over answering the phone. You don't see her face, and you don't see the phone. And the cinematographer said that when he saw the film screened, everybody in the theater leaned over like this, trying to peer past it. And so he said he understood, and that part of that is that communal experience. When you're doing that, you kind of notice the person next to you doing that, and then you're kind of, and that's part of the craft of film, and part of the experience of watching it, and part of that communal sense. And then afterwards, coming out of the dark, where you've been with strangers or friends, and then seeing that response. And so I'm always fighting for finding new venues and making them accessible
and create this community experience. That's why film festivals are so important.
Yes.
Are so important. today more than ever. Today we have access to all these platforms, so we can really, stay home and just try to understand what's going on all the streaming platforms that we have. That on the one hand is also a great opportunity for filmmakers to start, but on the other hand, you need to go out there. You need to come here to share experience, to put your body and all yourself with other people, and that gives another level of experience. And yes, reading and writing is so important, but I would like to remind everybody that Fellini wanted to be, wanted to draw little stories in his life, and he couldn't do that at the professional level. So he said, okay, what's trendy right now? Being a filmmaker, I'm gonna do it. Huh? So every single, what I'm saying is, I agree with you. Writing and reading is extremely important, but at the same time, and what it's in the conversation, yes, storyteller is extremely important. Also have radically different narrative is really important, as Ethan was saying. But also, arts are related in mysterious ways. So starting from a different angle can create interesting circles and pathways, in my opinion.
Well, the other thing about festivals is you're getting a curated experience, which I think is really important, because there's a lot of stuff streaming, but how do you know what's good? How do you know what might work well together in a context? And the festivals have these wonderful people going through hundreds of movies, many of which do not get shown because they're either not worth showing or because they don't fit or whatever. But they're going through a lot of stuff and culling it down to a smaller amount. And I know most of the programmers at festivals, and I appreciate the work they do, putting things together and then putting it in a context. When you go see these films, you'll have filmmakers there, or you'll have somebody introducing it to give you a sense of why this film is important to show, how you might want to watch it, what things you might want to consider. And those are all things you may not get just sitting at home, flipping on the TV and catching something. So,
I'm going to be the contrarian of the group. If you're going to be a filmmaker, take your time. Because once you make the film, if it's not a really good film, you may make it to a film festival and that's it. Take your time, write a great script, have a compelling story. That will attract the talent, that'll attract the financing, that'll attract the film festivals, that'll attract people who will buy the film. Making film is very expensive, and it takes a lot of time, a lot of emotion. So you want to pay back, not just to pay back in money, but in the fact that you did something substantial. But take your time. Don't just say, I want to make a film, blah, 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 take 4 friends together, blah, blah, and you put it in a film festival. That doesn't take you anywhere. Take your time and do a great film, and then everybody will follow you. So.
Yeah, I just want, you kind of went the direction I was going to go, which is, yes, financing is a huge challenge for the film industry, but also just making a film that people will watch, just that where business and film intersect is a very interesting and challenging place.
It's the film business.
And that's where you have to strive for if you want to have a career, not a hobby. So, you're talking about all those films that, a lot of films go away that nobody sees. Well, somebody spent years making those films. And a lot of times maybe in a bubble where they didn't really stop and think, why would this festival say yes to this film? Why would this, why would an audience want to show up and watch this film? Who's in it? What's the story about? Is it interesting? Is it different? Is it engaging? That's I think a huge challenge, because we want to make art, but we also don't, start doing that. And how do you balance those two areas in order to have a career, not just a hobby, in order to get accepted into film festivals? I think you were telling me, how many submissions at Sundance this year?
Last one was in 4,000?
4,000 out of how many films do they play? 150 or something?
130 or
100, 4,000 films at 130.
And if you win Sundance, sorry I'm not on the panel, but if you win Sundance, you're still not guaranteed distribution.
Very
Yeah.
few films get.
So I always talk to filmmakers and I go, you should follow more of a commercial path than the festival path. That's
Well, I mean, it also depends. As filmmakers, there's all different kinds of filmmakers. I mean, there are people who may want to make films as a hobby, and that's what they want to do. There's people who may want to make it in addition to a career of something else, and those who want to become filmmakers. But I will be a little contrary to what you said in the sense that I think the best advice I have ever heard about filmmaking came from Sam Raimi at a panel at Comic-Con. And so, a lot of times people come up and they say like, hey, I want to be a filmmaker, what do I need to do? And Sam Raimi was really direct. He said, this is what you do. He says, every week you write a script, you shoot it, you edit it, you show it on the weekend, you show it to your friends, and then you listen to what they have to say about it, and on Monday you start writing another script, and you shoot it again. And he said, you don't have to ask, when will I be a filmmaker? You're going to become a filmmaker. Now, making a film every week is not entirely practical, although now with your cell phones, you can make a film at practically no cost. And, I mean, there are movies that are shot on cell phones that have gotten distribution. But the thing...
Tangerine, to be exact.
Exact, yes. Or one. But the thing about his advice is like, yes, I think if you want to make that film that's going to be your calling card or that you really want to invest your time and money in, you should definitely take the time, craft a script, really, make sure that everything's in place when you want to make it. But the process of becoming a filmmaker, you have to make mistakes. So make them on a smaller scale. Make smaller films because you can be taught all sorts of things. You can try to read and learn about it and talk to people, but until you're actually, on the set, making decisions, seeing the things that you face, seeing the things that you have to learn about, that will only happen when you're actually making a film. And if you can do it on this smaller scale, just write a script, take your cell phone, go out, shoot it, go back, edit it, and then you realize I didn't get the coverage I really need to edit that together. Or what do I do if the sound didn't turn out on these shots and I still have to edit the piece together? But it's much better to do it on this scale of, hey, this didn't cost me a lot of money, but I learned this, and this. I mean, Quentin Tarantino said he never went to film school, but he made a couple of crappy films for like $35,000 that he never showed to anyone, and he just threw them away. But he said that was the best film school he ever got. So, those things are really important. I mean, I've judged a lot of, I went to film school, I've made films, I've edited on films, part of what I do at KPBS is edit packages and stuff, so I'm constantly editing and shooting. But I remember being on a film festival committee where they were judging films, and there was this one film I really wanted to include, and one of the judges on the panel says, oh, I know those filmmakers. He says they totally fucked up their shoot. They didn't know how to shoot sync sound. So this is back when it was on film. They didn't know how to shoot sync sound. So we shouldn't reward them by showing their film because they didn't know how to do this thing. They didn't get it right. But the thing was, they screwed up their sync sound, but they came up with a solution for how to finish their film, which was they created a narrator for the film who read all the dialogue for all the characters. But it was a film noir kind of thing. And so the character they picked was this guy who was in jail. So he reads all the parts for the blonde bimbo and the Weasley little guy. But the thing was, they had a problem on the set. They didn't give up. They came up with a solution that worked in the context of the film, made it, if I didn't know that they had a problem, and I couldn't tell that that's why they made that choice. So to me, I would have hired those guys over the guys who got all the shots perfectly framed and in focus. Because if they didn't face any adversarial conditions or challenges, then they might not have the skills to overcome those things. So anyway, I think that
let me ask Ethan and Brian to pitch in because they're too polite.
Go for it.
I feel like there's a couple of conversations happening, partly about creativity, partly about spaces for films, and I wish there was an easy way to connect them. I'll try. Beth, earlier you were talking about, and it's also me kind of being a little contrary contrarian, maybe just a pessimist, but also thinking about challenges that we all face professionally. And Ethan and Beth were talking about finding venues and creating venues for kinds of films that might not have the opportunity to be shown.
My phone barks. I didn't silence it.
But just from my experience, like hosting venue or being at a venue as a host for films, for film festivals, knowing that if you build it doesn't mean people are going to come. That just because you go to a film festival doesn't mean people care about film festivals. I love being at the Ultrastar, not because it's a sexy venue. It's the opposite of that. I mean, it smells like popcorn from the 80s. But I love that the Ultrastar has 7 auditoriums. During a festival, we have 4 of them. That means 3 of the venues, of the auditoriums, are for people wanting to watch like Aquaman. And they come in and they see pictures of like Korean soap operas. They're just Korean like rom-coms, like posters. They see a red carpet of people that do not look like they should be on the big screen. And you know what? They hate this. They're like, what are you doing to our space? And they ask me like, why does the Asian Film Festival exist? They say, can I go? Am I allowed to go? They say, are your films in Asian? As if that was a language.
That's the best line of it.
That actually happened. I'm not making that up.
That's so good.
But then they ask like legitimately, like I mean that's kind of just a low blow, but like they ask legitimate questions like, are they subtitled films? So tying it back to reading. And then so also as part of their own discovery, like they want to be educated. Like they're asking these questions often for legitimate reasons. Like they want to know how they can be involved. In the beginning, they're ignorant questions of, can this be for me? Can turn later into a conversation for like, what can I get out of this? But later to, is there something here that I've always wanted that I never knew because I was only in those 3 auditoriums? So in terms of challenges, that perpetually is the challenge. Not necessarily of finding films. The films are great for reasons, very diverse reasons, because there are very diverse ways in which films can be made, and I think that's what we've been talking about thus far. And we know our audiences are very diverse in terms of what kind of movies they want to see. So we have a film for every single possible kind of film goer, way more than the Ultrastar normally programs in the 7 auditoriums. Yet there's this perception that a film festival film, let alone an Asian film festival film, any kind of film festival, faces the challenge of your product is niche, your product is marginal. So how do we, within our mission, which is to get people to care about Asian stories, but also how do we all work together, that we are all kind of working in quote unquote niche and marginalized spaces, how can we all work together such that collectively our voice, which is not Hollywood's, matters to everybody so they will go pay for it and sustain us professionally. So that to me is the challenge.
Lots of challenges, 20 some odd 8 years or whatever it's been. There's probably not a day that goes by, especially we run so many programs, that every day is like this, ups and downs, to be honest with you, whether it's running the facility, the projector stroke, to major issues about funding, staffing, and so every day that it goes like that. And so what I tell filmmakers and artists or people doing film festivals, number one, you have to say inside yourself, I'm going to do it, no matter what. I'm going to do this event. Give yourself a deadline, possibly, but if I don't have an Ultrastar, I'm just going to screen it on the side of the wall. It's okay, but I'm going to do it in November. I'm going to make this film. And you give yourself that strong commitment to do that. And I think you said it best with the long-term goals. I think everyone needs to have those goals in mind, because every day is going to be a challenge. What we do is challenging. It's not easy on multiple levels, but it's important that we're doing it. And then I would say one of the biggest challenges for all of us in the room is how do we get the tools into the young storytellers of this world that don't have the resources, right? Filmmaking does cost money, but so how as we as artists become mentors or organizations or film festivals work with youth that are not in film school, they're not in a fancy high school here in San Diego County. How do we find those next artists? But they need the tools, they need to be educated, we need to be out in the community. So that's the challenge for all of us to look at, is how do we find those next filmmakers that are not necessarily going to the big film schools.
Yeah, let me translate these last thing that you said, Ethan, as another question for the panel, and then we open up for the discussions. What do we need here in San Diego to resist or to thrive? Huh? I'm really interested in knowing also more about your organization, JODI, because your story of saying basically we started from scratch and now we're growing and we're making so many connections day by day. It's really something that can be translated in some useful tips for everybody here.
Well, the film consortium, the word consortium, which everyone goes, what does that mean? Or how do you say that? Over the years, the idea that it was, an organization of organizations, right? If we can all work together collectively, we can get a lot farther than if we work in our own individual little bubbles, in our own little communities, in our own little, groups of friends and people. And, the film consortium and the goal of what we've done over the years and have a long way to go on is connecting all the dots. At the time I said I knew 2 actors. There was actually a ton of different people and organizations and groups here in San Diego that weren't talking to each other, that, and people, actors, producers, writers, musicians, sound designers, all sorts of people who just didn't know each other. And just by putting them in the room together and getting them to know each other, it created all this incredible amount of work that's being produced that we get to screen, luckily get to screen every year through our events and help sort of connect some of the other festivals in with as well. So, to me, any community, any arts community needs to just work closer with people that aren't doing the same thing they're doing, and collaborate on their mailing lists and collaborate on their resources and sort of help build connections across those groups instead of, focusing so heavily on their own group and their, building out, their audience as much. It has the same effect, but just exponential. If we work with each other's groups, then our groups grow just naturally. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I knew 2 actors. I get hit up probably 10 times a day by actors now. There's thousands of actors in San Diego. I would have never known that had I not gone out and said, hey, actors, let's all meet up and talk, So that to me is often what's lacking in San Diego, is that sort of desire and will and effort to collaborate across with groups that we don't naturally, instinctually connect with.
The problem I found with some of the events that you guys do is just that the people who are making films within the consortium aren't people who are going to festivals. And a lot of these filmmakers will show their films at your film week, and will bring their cast and crew in to watch their film and maybe some others, but a lot of times I see people come in to watch their film and leave. They don't even have the decency to stay for the rest of the films on the program. And people who are making films, if you guys aren't supporting places like festivals or venues like Digital Gym, which is showing truly independent film, there's not going to be any place to show film. So, that's what I really would like to see, is more of these filmmaking communities, not just working together so that they can keep making films, but recognize the places that are potentially going to be showing your films and getting an audience outside of just the other people who are making your movie. Because, these film festivals, need that kind of support, I think. And, that's what I really want to see. And, for me, because I work as a film critic and I also work programming, right now I work with Film Geeks and we're doing this year-long program. So we've been trying to reach out to as many different festivals and other places in order to put together one calendar that has everybody listed, and also to make sure that the events we program aren't on top of somebody else's event, because we're competing for the same audience. We're not competing with the people who are going out to see Aquaman. We're competing with other people who are going to Hillcrest or going to another film festival. So Miguel Rodriguez, who works is the founder and director for the Horrible Imaginings Film Festival. You know, we've been spending weeks trying to make sure, like, you know, do we have Comic-Con on the thing? Do we have the Italian festival, the Asian film, the Latino, the Jewish, the German, the, you know, Arab Film Festival, the Fringe Festival? Like, do we have all that stuff on the calendar, and can we try to program our stuff around that to respect those other organizations? Because we want to try, you know, and work with them. And, you know, as film geeks, we have partnered with a number of the other festivals because we want to try and get as much crossover between festivals, because you know what? I mean, I tend to like genre filmmaking a lot, but you know, going to, when Brian programs the Mystery Kung Fu Theater, which is this crazy stuff that nobody ever gets to see, you know, the people who like that would love some of the extreme Latin film that Moises will find at the Latino Film Festival. You know, and there's crossover that people may not realize right away, and so I think like, that's something that I think I wish there was some group that would be able to help bring all like these events together so that we could create this master calendar and try to keep as many things separate as possible, because there's nothing harder than trying to make choices between, you know, one festival you love and another. So.
You know, this comment applies to all art. It applies to music, to dance, to film, to painting. San Diego doesn't have the opportunities that other markets do. This is why so many artists leave San Diego. If you really are serious about being a filmmaker, you have to go to LA or New York City. Sorry, but that's the way it is.
Or Atlanta now.
What?
Atlanta.
Or Atlanta, yeah, we have a lot of studios there. So at the end of the day, San Diego suffers from a lack of sophistication into the arts. It's more of a sports, outdoors, and so forth and so on. Now, Susanna's doing a great job of trying to create more of an art ethos in this town. So what we don't need is more films, and we don't need is more of this. What we need is more consumers will actually consume and go to the film festivals and go to the art galleries and go to the ballet and so forth and so on. So we're really fighting a more of a cultural deficiency in this town. Now, everybody in this room is doing the best they can, but it's very difficult to force something that it just doesn't exist right now. Now, if you really want to be a filmmaker, the first thing you need to say to yourself, why do I want to be a filmmaker? And how serious do I want to take that? If you want to do it for the lifestyle because it's fun and blah blah blah, that's one route. If you want to do it because you're really a serious filmmaker and you really have ambition, and I don't mean money ambition, but you really want to be a serious filmmaker, then you take a different route. And the first thing you need to do is take a vow of poverty. Because most filmmakers, I have two very good friends who have major film credits, and they have sacrificed their whole lives. They have no family, not a lot of resources. I mean, they're members of the GGA and so forth and so on, but it is really a passionate career. I mean, there's like the basketball players, some are super millionaires, but most filmmakers are, it's a passionate endeavor that you take. So you really have to ask yourself, why do I want to be a filmmaker, and how much am I willing to invest in that for the return that I'm going to get? And I don't mean that in a negative way, I just think that that's a smart thing to do.
It's not glitz and glamours, I always say. Like what Suzanne's doing with Vanguard, I kind of feel that it first starts with, educating people on these other options that are available, these different film festivals that are happening in San Diego. If someone doesn't have the information to understand better, then they're most likely just going to, breeze past it and not really think too much about it. And for me, personally, it comes down to just educating, people and having them understand what you're doing, and why. I always say why because I read that Simon Sinek book, Start with Why. And I've kind of taken that as my purpose in filmmaking. Why do I want to do this? It wasn't about, making boo-boos of money, because my old college professor had me go and speak to his students, and the thing I always say is that if you get into filmmaking just because of what you see on the Oscars and all that stuff, no, they have agents, their agents bust their balls for them. But from an independent standpoint, you're not going to be making that type of money. You're going to be going from project to project, and honestly, you're going to win some and lose some. So it goes back into just educating and getting people together on a monthly thing. Getting these people to commit one day out of the month to come to things like these and just have conversations and really just talk about film. And I think that's important because we've, as a community, just lost that essence of why we love film. And we're always just going to the movies to go see these big Hollywoods that, Stan Lee's been producing out the ass. I can't, tell you how many times my kid has always wanted to go see a Marvel movie and not an independent film. But then it just really comes back to stepping back and saying, he's a kid, and it's my job to educate him on films. And, taking him back to David Fincher and having him watch Seven.
Hey, wait, I like Marvel films too.
I love Marvel films. Great. I'm not gonna back. I love Marvel films, but
Go see Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
how many
Oh my god.
how many Spider-Mans do we need?
Oh my god, this one is brilliant. It is so
There's some
good.
great Hollywood.
No.
There's great Hollywood
I mean,
movies,
there's-
but on a independent level, there's so many great filmmakers that are not getting that recognition because of that. And to kind of piggyback what he was saying, reading literature, read a lot of scripts. When I first got into filmmaking, that wasn't important to me. But then as I've gotten older and matured over time, there isn't a time where I spend once a week reading a different script and then writing a script and then putting that script away and then coming back to it a week later and then rereading that script and then reworking that script constantly over and over, and then saying to a group of friends of mine, hey, let's get together at the house, have some food, and let's do a read-through. What do you like about this scene? What do you think? Is the pacing too slow? How do we, are we dragging too long on this? And really start to rework that script until the point where you guys can all come to a consensus and say, this is a working script. What's next? And then from there, start getting all the moving pieces together. And what I have been doing now is for financing for a project that I'm working on the following year, I've been reaching out to just friends of mine to say, hey, I will offer you a percentage of whatever someone is willing to give to a project. So let's say I'm offering you 5%. So if you get me in a room with a person who has the money and I can convince them to make a contribution to this project, let's say it's 10 grand. You get 5% out of that 10 grand. To give an incentive to motivate people to go out and help you find the finances for your films. Because a lot of the times, we're not going to be able to, drive around LA. And what I find fortunate is the power of technology. You having the social media, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, and reaching out to those people who follow you because of what you do and saying, I am offering you an incentive for you to help me get this film made. And they feel a part of the process as well. And it's always about bringing them a part of that process and showing them step by step what you're doing and being transparent with them, because then they're more motivated to help you get that film made. And that's where I'm starting to see more and more, the more active I am on my Twitter and interacting with those people and not making it feel like I'm a big-headed person that I've made it, when really I haven't. And just really, taking the time down to someone tweeting me at 2 a.m. and then me firstly waking up and reading that and then sending them a message back just to see that I'm an actual person and that they can actually reach me. Is very powerful, because a lot of the times people use their social media and they reach out to their favorite actors or their favorite DP or their favorite director, and then they don't get a response. And then, it's like, oh, well, they're probably busy. But what does it take for, someone to just, get a like, and then just show that connectability that you still are reachable, and you haven't made it, but you're still down on that ground level, and you can communicate with them. And I think that's very powerful, because then these people want to feel involved in anything that you're doing, and if you can help them understand and bring them into that, it makes it a whole lot more easier for you to get things done. And yeah.
On education, I really would like to hear a comment from Ethan.
I mean, I think this idea of collaborative, getting together, understanding calendars for venues, exhibitions is important. But yeah, in terms of education, how can we really connect the elementary school kid levels and schools and teachers to the middle school, to the community college, to the university? Because there needs to be like a scaffolding approach, and everyone needs to be connected. We need to be able to see who's that young kid that's in that cool after-school program, or who's making films at City College that maybe we should connect to the SDSU MFA program. So I don't see that. People do communicate, but I think a better communication between all instructors, but of all ages, and so that we help youth kind of get to the right path and mentor them into the right space. And that space might be SDSU, it might be UCLA, it might be out of the city, right? But we did need guidance. There's so many potential artists out there, but they kind of get lost from one school to the next, or one teacher to the next. So how do we connect the educators here, the film educators and technology educators here in San Diego?
Well, there's the two big campuses we have here, San Diego State and UCSD, and the approach that each one takes to film is radically different. And there's no real overlap and connection between the two of those. I mean, I went to UCSD, but a number of my friends went to San Diego State. And I would say San Diego State filmmakers will probably be more likely to get a job in the industry, but UCSD filmmakers are much more likely to make, a personal independent film. And so there's like radically different mentality just there, that if there was, if some San Diego State professor was able to come over to UCSD to provide some instruction on grant writing, or something that has a much more practical application, but some of the UCSD professors, if they could instill into the San Diego State filmmakers that, hey, you know what, a perfectly exposed in-focus shot is not necessarily the most important thing in your film. I mean, what I found between the two campuses is when UCSD films failed, they tend to fail in more interesting ways. When San Diego State films failed, it was like they might look better, but there was not a whole lot of content. And they weren't very personal, is what it was. It was like a lot of those filmmakers were trying to make something that they thought was more commercially viable. And I mean, I used to work on student film festivals, so I saw entries, hundreds of entries from both campuses for over 10 years. So there was a real difference kind of in approach, and I wish there was a way to kind of take the best of each one, because both of them have definite pluses, but I wish there was a way to kind of get those campuses to have an exchange.
Or at least, put them in a sort of communication of any kind.
But what good does that do? I mean, at the end of the day, to me, success or failure is whether people saw it and liked it. You can make the best film in the world, and nobody sees it. It doesn't do any good. That's all I'm saying. So why do you want to get UCSD and San Diego State together to do the same things? Let them do different things, and let the public then decide.
Because seeing the filmmakers who emerge from both have problems making a living out of what they're trying to do.
But I gotta tell you, if you think that you come out of film school as a filmmaker, you're dead wrong. You're just starting
but still,
to begin to learn how to be a filmmaker. Then you spend 10, 20 years polishing your craft.
I think it's just another opportunity to
just get started.
But also to at a younger age to see different approaches, to know different people, to
learn how to do grant writing,
to learn how to make different mistakes.
If you go to NYU or USC, different approaches altogether. Many successful directors came out of both.
But my point.
I don't see why you need to bring everybody
San Diego
together.
State and UCSD UCSD exist here in San Diego. Close proximity, and both have strengths. Why not share the strengths? Once those people graduate, like they're on their own to make it or not make it, but why not expose them to as much as they possibly can? Why limit them to, I mean, I would have loved to have had a grant writing program at UCSD. I mean, that would have been really helpful.
I think the challenge you're facing there is just bureaucracy. I mean, I've worked in
Oh, yeah,
both
yeah, yeah.
schools,
I mean-
and we're making up a dream that will never
No,
happen.
it'll
because
no.
These people
So
aren't even in the same
Ryan
universe.
is a professor at
So-
the State.
As a professor in film at SDSU and the person who teaches the grant writing, I can tell you it's exactly about bureaucracy that this is.
Yeah, I know. It's a dream.
So can I add
Especially in
one
different
thing?
fields because there's no film program in UCSD, so that.
Yeah.
I love this, energy that we're putting together.
But if I could spin this around, because I really appreciate Pete's point about earlier you, and actually both you and Xavier spoke on this, that there's another way of thinking about education beyond just training filmmakers. That Pete talked about cultural deficiency, and Xavier, you talked about wanting to educate your son or other people to think about the possibilities of what film can be. And I think that's sort of an untapped area too. Like, it's not just lifting up our filmmakers, but also lifting up our audiences. Not necessarily a way that's like, you need to be more elite, but that you should be more alive when you watch a movie. And so, in thinking about what San Diego might need more, your original question, I'm sure this will be a controversial statement, but bear with me for a bit. I think we need more film critics. I mean, Beth, you do an amazing job, but you can't be the only one. And in terms of people in this town,
There's a lot of them out there.
there's a lot of them, but nobody reads them.
There's
So this is
because everyone's
Get your name all over.
because this is the other side of it. We live in a time where music and food criticism is incredible. Food criticism is at its heyday right now. You know why? Because we are all food critics. We all read, consume, rely on food criticism. So we are too food journalists all the time.
Hashtag food porn.
Exactly. So why is it that we are so sophisticated with discovering new foods, of trying new tastes, of thinking about the hybridity of taste? Like, we're all such experts at this. Why can't we use that same approach to talking about film? Why can't we want to discover films the same way we want to discover a new restaurant that just opened? Nobody talks about film that way.
I tell you, the attention span of a millennial is 8 seconds. This is true.
Not to get weird.
You know, there's a great book.
Sorry, the millennials.
It's called iGen. It's written by a professor at San Diego State. Her name is Jean something or other. iGen. You got to read it because iGen is the generation after the millennials. She gives you a very interesting, based on basic research on what's going on. A millennial has an 8-second attention span, and iGen has a 6-second attention span. A movie used to be 120 minutes, then it got to 100 minutes, now it's 90 minutes.
You're going to different movies than I am.
No, you do. No, you read it. When you read scripts now, it's 90 minutes. If you want your movie, take the credits out, it's 90 minutes. 90 minutes in these days for the kids who go to movies is too long. So somehow the whole, that's what I'm trying to find, just the whole industry needs to figure out how to be in sync with the attention span and the mentality of the new generation. And I think that's something that a lot of people are not really paying attention to.
I mean, I think the reason film criticism, well, I think part of the reason, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, Brian, but I think one of the reasons why film criticism isn't valued much is because people understand, I think, more readily why you like or don't like food without bringing politics or anything into it. Like, if I say, like, I'm allergic to broccoli or I'm a vegan or whatever, like, you don't get quite as much, like, shit for it. Whereas if you talk about film, people bring all sorts of things. I mean, I was told when the new Ghostbusters film came out, I had to like it because I was a woman. Wait a minute, why is that even factoring into this? Why can't I just not like it because I think it's a bad movie?
I like Joe version better.
You're a misogynist. So, but I mean, I think what happens with criticism, and now especially with like comments and social media and all that, is like everybody, instead of like reading criticism and thinking about actually having a conversation about it and arguing a point, like, hey, so you didn't like that, well, what was it you didn't like? And then bringing up a point and arguing it, it gets reduced down to
like, not
to
like.
like, yeah, like you're an idiot for not liking it, or you're obviously, you know, from a different political point of view than me, or whatever. And I mean, I find like I have a harder time now dealing with comments and stuff because it just reduces down like right away to something like really base, rather than just like, can we talk about what the differences are? Like, don't call me an idiot. Like, I'm fine to disagree. And, you know, I mean, that's what's fun about some conversations at film festivals. Even when you have differing opinions, usually the people on panels are more willing to discuss what it is that they didn't like about a film. Yeah. And rather than just reducing it to insulting the other person or striking it up to some sort of, you know, they'll say like, okay, well, you know, this didn't work for me because I've seen this before on too many films, and here's why, and here's this reference.
That's I think this is a great point, and you know, we could really comment a lot on that, but I would like to open you know, the floor for questions.
One more thing. One more thing. To piggyback off of what Beth said about UCSD and San Diego State, I honestly think that what's happening with these, I've only went to State 1 year before I dropped out. But what I kind of feel is that professors are given this false narrative that everyone can be a director. And that's not just the point. I feel that you don't have to go to film school to be a director. You can be a badass gaffer or a badass grip, key grip, you know, an editor, an AD, a visual effects. And I kind of feel that if these universities will then say, instead of saying, oh, you go out and direct this, each individual student say, no, the curriculum is this. You're going to be our director for this project. You're going to be our gaffer. You're going to be our writer. You're going to be our grip. Let's all work together to make a good film. Instead of saying, oh, well, these two people together, and then it becomes this power trip in everyone's heads like, oh, I need to be a director. And most people are not cut out to be a director.
Sure.
And it's okay.
And it's okay. There are so many other
there's so many other jobs
in just this film industry. We have a first question here, I guess.
Sure. So actually, perfect segue, Xavier. I'm very interested in hearing if anyone on the panel has any experience in these other sectors of film, because being someone who, I mean, I work in advertising, I've never wanted to be a filmmaker, but now being a part of a production, you see how many people it goes into making a film. So like even Ethan, what you were saying about the elementary schools, and so say you have a student who's very artistic, right? Well, is there an opportunity to get them exposed to production design at an early age to then be the next amazing production designer? I feel like that's an area that gets zero attention until you are in the industry, but is probably a great opportunity for someone who just has a unique, like makes amazing dioramas, and it's like that opportunity is never brought to them. So just curious if that's ever discussed within any of these different organizations you all work within, and if there's an opportunity.
Well, some film schools actually have specialty. They could be acting,
Right.
they could be editing, they could be lighting, they could be writing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that you go to film school, you're an auteur and you're a director.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there's so many aspects to making a film that you can actually go to certain film schools that actually allow you to specialize.
Right.
It's like medicine, you know, you may want to be a surgeon or this. So I think that's the way to do it. And a lot of things is just to be a PA.
Yes.
You know, just to volunteer as a PA and just hang out and go get coffee for everybody, because that's what PAs do. That's what you started the business as a PA. But you start learning how things are done, and you do pre-production, post-production, location, blah, 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 blah. So the best way to learn the film business is to drop out of film school and go work at a production. And you save a lot of money so you can make some films.
And that's what I did. Dropped out of film school, State. A buddy of mine who did go to San Diego State, Ryan Copeland, brought me on Pretty Little Liars, and he was like, yo, I need a PA. Got on there, and he's known as Coyote. Badass grit. One thing he always said to me is, keep your fucking mouth closed, keep your ears open.
Yeah.
Because the simple fact of the matter is that you're going to be just listening to everyone communicate, and you want to keep your eyes always moving. Why is the gaffer talking with the DP and the director? Listen in on what they're saying, how they're communicating, because it's, at the end of the day, filmmaking is a chain of command. And if you break that chain of command, communication's automatically broke, because then if the chain of command has a mislead, then your grips don't know what the fuck to do, because they're just waiting on their key grip to give them the message. They're like worker ants. And so you have to think of it in that aspect of it. And I do, completely agree is that, there are kids that are great at all that stuff. And colleges today are not really giving students the opportunity to zone in on one specific thing, because their curriculum is, we have to cram all this in a certain semester. And it's really up to the professor to break this curriculum down on filmmaking into semesters, to where only on this semester we're only focusing on writing. We're going to get scripts. We're going to read scripts this week. We're going to break these scripts down. We're going to have dialogue and conversations about these scripts. The next semester, we're going to start talking about lighting. Why is lighting important? How to light if you are limited resources, how to use available lighting, things of this. Then, go into steps, because a kid going into a college, university, not a film school, because film schools are, some Brooks Institute was a really good one that closed down up in, Ventura, I believe. And I know a lot of really good DPs out of Brooks Institute who learn other aspects of it, and it just really came down to being on set and being a PA. Till this day, I still PA, and I'm a director.
Can I, JODI had a comment, right?
Oh, I was, question was, I have taught at probably 4 different schools here in San Diego, and every program is different, every outcome is different, every student is different, and I don't think you can be like, they're doing this or they're not doing that or whatever. What I see across the schools is, the students try different jobs on sets. Not everyone can direct, but you need 10 people to make the film, so obviously not everybody's directing that film. One person's directing that film, and everyone else fills in various positions. And one of the things that I teach in my classes, very first day, is I talk about, what skill sets do you have? Are you creative? Are you technical? Are you organized? Or are you a great people person? Because every job requires 1, 2, 3, or 4 of those. But not every job requires creativity. It really doesn't. Sometimes you got to show up and shut up and hold a boom, and there's no. So it's what I think is important is to identify what that skill set is that the student or whatever already has, and where that fits into the different jobs, and give it a try. That doesn't mean I'm not that creative. I'm really not, but I'd love to be a great director. So I go and do that anyway, because I'm going to figure it out. Last thing I'll say, sorry, is, damn it, caught me off guard there. The Film Consortium, we kind of specialize in sets and getting people working, getting them out there making films and doing things. And I put students from Team Producers Project on sets every weekend in this city somewhere. I put all my students from City College on sets every weekend. So there's opportunities to go out and put your hands on and do it, because as Beth said, you don't get better at making films by talking about it, you get to do it. And there's all those things happening here that these students can become a part of. I don't know about elementary school, that sounds like a giant liability. Middle school, probably too. But at least with high school students, we've been able to do that.
Yeah. So I just wanted one quick thing about education, which is just my professor at UCSD also suggested, don't just take film classes. Take a literature class, take an art class, a painting class, take a, expose yourself to other things, because if you're talking about lighting, what better than to look at some of master painters to get sense of composition, and for storytelling, what better way than to study Shakespeare? So broadening your perspective, because if all your reference points are other movies, then it kind of narrows down.
We have a question over there.
Yeah. So if you're in the script writing phase and for a documentary, can you talk about some of the pros and cons for making shorts versus making features besides financing? anybody that works mostly with documentary film? Or?
Well, I've written a lot of scripts and I've doctored a lot of scripts. It's just like poetry and short stories and novels. Each discipline has its own rhythm and has its own length. So very few novelists are good screenwriters. Very few documentarists are good screenplayers because it's just a different discipline, a different structure. I think you just have to channel yourself one way
Well,
and
I mean,
decide where you want to go.
the other thing to consider is a lot of filmmakers will make a short, which could be I mean, you're talking documentary, but you know, if you can find some piece of the story that works as a short, and you can create that, that can be a means of raising money to make the longer piece. I mean, as a filmmaker, you should kind of have a sense of this story needs this much time to tell it, or you know, if you have a great idea and you're at 10 minutes and you really feel you've covered everything that you want to, then don't try to make it a feature. But if you feel like you've got this big idea that needs a 90-minute documentary or 60-minute documentary, but you don't have access to the funds or the ability to do that, find a piece of that story and try to make the best possible short film of that and submit that to festivals, get some recognition for that, or just use it as a means to maybe do a Kickstarter or Indiegogo or a GoFundMe, or show it to somebody that you think might get you access to more money. So, you know, I think there's not like one generic answer for that. You have to really evaluate what it is that you're making and
Let
how.
me say the same thing you said. Write a scene. Because movies are a series of scenes. Just write a great scene and shoot it. Doesn't have to be beautifully lit. The dialogue might not be perfect, but it shows that you have character development knowledge and you actually know how to structure a scene that has almost like a beginning, a middle, and an end. So it's like a mini film, but then people say, oh, if you can do that, then you can lace different scenes together. And then you can actually raise some money that way.
Ron?
Yeah, we're just a few hours south of the behemoth of a city called Los Angeles, but you've all made a decision to be here. Can you talk about, there must be a reason.
Well,
wait a minute. Can you talk about the pros and cons of being in this part of the world? There's got to be some negatives, but I'm sure there's some positives. Can you give a regional cast to this conversation? Because I'm curious about it.
I'll answer that. I'd say the pros to San Diego is it hasn't been sort of traumatized by the film industry yet. So people are willing to open their doors.
They're not jaded.
They're not jaded. They're not, they're not trying to charge you $10,000 a day to use their bar because that's what they heard, they can get. There's a love and an appreciation for, and it's still cool and it's still kind of exciting. So people will give you locations for cheap or free. People will help you out and work with you for cheap or free. The authorities will be like, oh, that's cool. What are you doing? You're throwing a girl in the trunk and up Home Boulevard. They will look past it. They will, oh, that's cool. I was in a commercial once. You get a lot more sort of open-mindedness. Permits are free. The weather is great. You got all sorts of locations here, from the city to the mountains to Mexico to the desert to whatever. You can kind of get a lot of different looks and a lot of different environments, and it's a wonderful place to live. It's San Diego. It's like America's finest city. LA is kind of the opposite of America's finest city. It's like America's. I won't say it. We all know what body part we're.
To piggyback of what Jody said, all those things are great, especially shooting something and not having to have a police officer say you have permits. Especially in LA, they see a slide of a camera out. First thing they ask you is you got permits. So
and those are non-union.
Yep, non-union.
Non-union, it's a big cost delta.
Yeah.
So far, these are pretty weak answers.
Well, why do you think we don't have big production companies?
For independent.
Because the money is not here.
So is there no compelling benefit other than it's funny?
No, there's just a lot of, resources to film out here and get things done without a whole chain of command of, how can I put it? Bureaucracy and, especially I've had encounterments working with LA to get permits and being backlogged 6 months. And a project was supposed to, I don't know the right people in LA to expedite that. So I was doing the due diligence of saying, hey, I need to get a permit. I have a project coming up. And then it's like, well, we can't get to you until like 6 months down the road. And what makes it a little bit easier is that I can go here down into San Diego, and if I need a permit super last minute, I can then talk to who I need to talk to, get a permit within 24 to 48 hours, and then I'm off to shooting wherever I need to shoot. And on top of that, there's really no clear difference in LA. The only difference is that LA has sound stages.
Post-production.
And post-production houses.
Yeah. No post-production.
There's one post-production up in Oceanside.
I know you're not supposed to ask 3 questions in a row. Is there a voice to the San Diego film community that you guys could identify as somehow part of a communal voice that...
I don't necessarily think there's a voice yet, and it really just comes, me personally, I'm in a bubble. I kind of stay in that bubble, but as I'm starting to, experiment more with filmmaking, I understand that I have to reach out of that bubble to get things done. So from that standpoint, I don't know who that voice is, and it really just takes that one person saying, I'm going to be the voice, I'm going to speak for everyone, but then he or she has to communicate, with everyone else in this community, and then get a final say to then go out there and be that voice. But I don't know who that voice is.
Well, normally there's like a film commission, but we don't have that.
But that's, that's not really a voice.
There. Sorry, so we can have at least another question.
Yeah, well, I was just going to ask, what resources does the city offer to local San Diego filmmakers? And if they don't offer anything right now, do you anticipate the new city council or whatever doing anything?
That's a good question.
Well, currently we have Brandy Shimabukuru, who is the filming program manager at the city. She's an awesome lady who works really hard, and she's building out the website to have like a crew directory and a location directory. So that's coming, and you can see it if you go to the website. You'll see it. I don't know. I think it was this year. We just elected Nathan Fletcher, who is very excited about. Who's very excited about helping build a regional film commission that can assist in attracting production to San Diego and permitting across different municipalities and unincorporated areas in San Diego that aren't part of the city. And they, you can get a permit, like he said, in 24 to 72 hours for free. So they're very responsive and helpful, and again, not jaded by the process. There's love and excitement for it.
Right. My question isn't so much about the industry itself; it's more kind of a general, abstract question. When I think of my own personal favorite movies, I'm thinking about things from the 1940s. So Carol Reed, right? You got the Michael Powell, Emmett Pressburger, John Ford, and what all these movies have in common is that there's a sense of formalism to them, right? There's a sense of unabashed beauty. So when I think of one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen, it's A Matter of Life and Death from The Archers. And when I see movies today, because of the proliferation of digital technology, there's been, I think, looser camera work in general, right? So when you see a movie and when you see a TV show, that line has been sort of blurred between the two. And do you think that effect, that blurring of the actual making of films has an effect on the audience? Meaning a person doesn't want to get up and see something that they could see on TV because it's basically the same in material form, if that makes sense.
But have you seen The Favorite or Coen Brothers film, or those films have as much formalism and craft and care.
It's not that there aren't formalistic films, it's more that because the Hollywood system produced so many films at the same time, right? And they all had that super high standard of craft. And it's not that there aren't craftsmen, obviously there are, Birdman was a beautiful film. Sorry.
Before we comment on that, also because there are film critics, professors, film historians, so we will never
never answer that
to comment. Beautiful question, especially from you know,
Yeah,
the young
props to
person.
you for watching older films.
Can we also hear from you?
Yes, it's more not really a question. I hear that one of the pain points that you have as a conglomerate or group of organizations is staffing, and I thought I was going to be able to separate from work, but I guess not. But there's a program called Tech Hire that's funded by the City of San Diego and basically allows organizations and employers, institutions who need support from interns, in this case students from film, that could work either with the film festivals or things like that. We can pay the wages for them for 150 hours at $15 per hour. And so I think this is a really good resource if you already have students that really would like some experience. So we can actually fund them if they come through our program, if they fill their requirements, and we can pay the wages for them. So there's no liability either on your end, and you can get students to help you and they get experience. So I have some business cards in case you're interested.
So I believe we have, and that's great, to hear and to learn that there are also tools, resources that I didn't know about it. No. So it's something I don't know if anybody here knew about it. So we can hear maybe one final comment from one of you guys. So, Bravis, we're gonna do that. Otherwise, I really.
Well, let's just thank Vanguard Culture.
Yeah, there it is.
Otherwise, I would like to thank
I just want to share. So we're live here, so this is why I'm doing this thing. It's not like a random selfie. But I just want to say thank you so much. I mean, what an incredible panel of film professionals who are all leading many generations of film industry. The future of San Diego's film industries and in the region. I do want to invite you to something pretty extraordinary, and it's a very low-key event. We're not telling a lot of people about it, so only the most adventurous ones can come. All right? So at 5, we're not telling the world where it's happening, but you guys are going to know because you're on the in crowd. And whoever's watching live, which, like 5 people or whatever. So at 7 o'clock, right outside over here, on that street, this Friday, something extraordinary and beautiful and moving is happening.
7 a.m. or p.m.?
7 p.m. 7 p.m. So come out here, 6:45, watch for a saxophone player, follow him, and then experience it, and then go have some tacos at Lola's or have a cocktail or whatever and do your downtown thing. But I promise you won't forget it. And it's going to be extraordinary. Right on this street on East Street.
Park at 13.
Okay? All right. Thank you so much, everybody.